On March 15, 2019, the Daytona International Speedway in Florida hosted what would become one of the most notorious qualification races in American motorsport history. Tyron Davidson, a 19-year-old racing prodigy from Sacramento, California, was preparing for what would be his final race. His impressive track record of 8 major victories in the past 4 months had established him as the season's breakthrough talent. Bookmakers set odds at 1.2 for his victory, reflecting overwhelming confidence in his abilities. At 2:15 p.m., Davidson's crew, led by his brother Francis Davidson, completed the mandatory pre-race vehicle inspection. The team documented perfect operational status of all systems, including brakes, suspension, and engine performance. Standard safety protocols were followed, with all inspections properly logged and verified. The qualification race began at 2:32 p.m. Davidson, driving car number 23, quickly established dominance over the field. By lap 20, he had built a 2.8-second lead over his nearest competitor, Michael Torres, in car 17. The race telemetry data showed Davidson maintaining consistent lap times around 44.3 seconds, demonstrating both his skill and the car's reliability. At 2:57 p.m., during lap 47, with Davidson leading by 3.5 seconds, the fatal mechanical failure occurred. The brake system, later determined to have been deliberately sabotaged, completely failed as Davidson entered turn 3. The vehicle's black box recorded a speed of 142 miles per hour at the moment Davidson attempted to engage the brakes. With no means to slow down, car 23 continued its trajectory directly into the barrier. The impact at 2:57:42 p.m. triggered an immediate chain reaction. The fuel tank ruptured upon collision, causing an instantaneous fire. The first rescue team, led by senior paramedic Jack Morrison, arrived at the scene within 28 seconds. Morrison and his team faced intense flames as they attempted to reach Davidson. 2 firefighters, Marcus Reed and Paul Wilson, worked to suppress the fire while 3 other rescue workers tried to access the vehicle's cockpit. The impact had severely deformed the car's frame, making standard extraction procedures impossible. The rescue team attempted to cut through the vehicle's body, but the intense heat and spreading flames hampered their efforts. The car's onboard fire suppression system had been damaged in the crash and failed to activate. Black box data later revealed that Davidson remained conscious for approximately 40 seconds after impact, attempting to release his safety harness. Despite the rescue team's desperate efforts, the combination of structural damage and intense fire made it impossible to reach Davidson in time. Dr. July Mark, monitoring vital signs through Davidson's in-suit sensors, recorded rapid deterioration of life signs. The team continued their extraction attempts until the fire completely engulfed the vehicle. At 3:03 p.m., Dr. Mark officially pronounced Tyron Davidson dead at the scene. The post-mortem examination revealed that Davidson had suffered severe trauma from the initial impact, including multiple fractures and internal injuries. However, the primary cause of death was determined to be smoke inhalation and severe burns. The medical report detailed third-degree burns covering over 90% of his body, making him virtually unrecognizable. The intensity of the fire and the speed of its spread were later attributed to the specific point of impact, which had ruptured both the fuel tank and hydraulic lines. The crash investigation team, led by senior investigator Robert Mitchell, documented that the fire reached temperatures exceeding 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, making survival impossible without immediate extraction. The heat was so intense that it partially melted sections of the aluminum frame, further complicating the rescue attempts. 1 week after Tyron Davidson's death, Francis Davidson, who served as the chief mechanic of his brother's team, obtained official permission to examine the wreckage. The investigation took place at the Daytona International Speedway's secure storage facility. During the routine examination, Francis noticed something unusual about the brake line, a clean, precise cut that was clearly visible to the naked eye. With his 15 years of racing mechanic experience, he immediately recognized this wasn't a typical mechanical failure. The cut in the brake line showed distinct tool marks, indicating the use of professional-grade equipment. The damage was located in a spot that would be easily overlooked during standard pre-race inspections. Francis's trained eye could see this wasn't a stress fracture or result of normal wear. The edges were too clean, too precise. This was deliberate sabotage, executed by someone who knew exactly where to strike. The location of the cut was particularly telling. It was made at a point where the brake line would hold up during initial testing, but fail under the extreme pressures of competitive racing. The saboteur had clearly understood the mechanical principles of the braking system and knew how to cause a catastrophic failure that would appear, at first glance, like a tragic accident. While cleaning out Tyrann's locker at the track, Francis discovered a USB drive hidden in the lining of his racing helmet. The drive contained audio recordings that would prove crucial to understanding why his brother had been targeted. These recordings, spanning the 3 months before Tyrann's death, captured conversations discussing massive betting operations. The discussions mentioned bets ranging from $2 million to $5 million, all being channeled through offshore accounts. One particular recording from March 10, 2019, caught Francis's attention. In it, 2 men discussed the need to handle Tyrann Davidson, viewing him as a threat to their betting operations. His consistent victories were making their race manipulation scheme increasingly difficult to maintain. They spoke casually about methods they had used before to solve similar problems. Among Tyrann's belongings, Francis also found a worn notebook filled with handwritten notes. The pages contained detailed information about other racing accidents from the previous year. Tyrann had documented 4 fatal crashes: James Rodriguez, Thomas Williams, Kevin Park, and Michael Foster. Each of these drivers had died when their vehicles experienced sudden mechanical failures while leading their respective races. The notebook revealed the pattern Tyrann had uncovered. Each accident occurred during races with unusually high betting activity. The victims were all successful drivers on winning streaks, much like Tyrann himself. He had noted similarities in how each crash occurred, always during crucial moments when the driver held a significant lead, and always due to seemingly inexplicable mechanical failures. His brother had meticulously tracked betting patterns, race results, and technical failures. The evidence pointed to a coordinated effort to manipulate race outcomes through sabotage, all while profiting from rigged betting schemes. His suspicions were confirmed when he found a draft email on Tyrann's laptop, addressed to Marcus Thompson, a racing journalist. The email detailed everything Tyrann had uncovered: the pattern of suspicious deaths, the connection to betting operations, and technical evidence suggesting deliberate sabotage. The meeting had been scheduled for March 16, 2019, the day after Tyrann's fatal crash. The evidence Francis uncovered painted a clear picture. His brother hadn't died in a random accident. He had been murdered to prevent him from exposing a criminal enterprise that had infiltrated professional racing. The organization had perfected the art of disguising murders as racing accidents, all while manipulating betting odds for massive profits. Tyrann's death was meant to silence him, but instead, his collected evidence would become the key to unraveling their entire operation. On April 2, 2019, Francis Davidson's investigation led him to Derek Morrison, a former mechanic who had worked for Blackline Racing until late 2018. Morrison initially refused to talk, but after several meetings and Francis sharing evidence about his brother's death, he finally agreed to meet at a small diner outside Tampa. Blackline Racing, under Vincent Carter's leadership, wasn't just a racing team. It was the center of an elaborate criminal enterprise. The organization controlled approximately 40% of all racing bets through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts. In 2018 alone, they had laundered over $100 million through these fake businesses. Morrison explained the mechanics of their operation. Selected mechanics were paid substantial bribes, ranging from $50,000 to $250,000 per job, to sabotage targeted vehicles. The sabotage was always designed to look like legitimate mechanical failure. They focused on drivers who were performing too well and threatening their betting odds, or those who, like Tyrann, had begun asking too many questions. The mechanics used various methods to ensure failures would occur during races. Morrison described how they had developed techniques that would pass pre-race inspections, but fail catastrophically under racing conditions. The organization had perfected these methods through years of practice, making each death appear as nothing more than a tragic racing accident. On March 25, just 4 days after his confession to Francis, Derek Morrison's body was discovered in his garage workshop in St. Petersburg. The official cause of death was listed as a heroin overdose, despite Morrison having no history of drug use. The police report noted that Morrison was found slumped over his workbench, with a used syringe nearby and track marks on his arm. However, the security footage from a neighboring business told a different story. The cameras captured two unidentified men entering Morrison's garage at 9:15 p.m., approximately 1 hour before his estimated time of death. The men, both wearing dark clothing and baseball caps, left the garage at 9:45 p.m. They departed in a black SUV with tinted windows and no license plates. The garage showed no signs of forced entry, suggesting Morrison either knew his visitors or was coerced into letting them in. Crime scene investigators found subtle signs of a struggle. A knocked-over toolbox, scuff marks on the floor, and Morrison's broken watch lying under a cabinet. These details were conspicuously absent from the initial police report. Francis, upon learning of Morrison's death, immediately recognized the pattern. Just like his brother, Morrison had been silenced after threatening to expose the truth. The staged overdose was a message to anyone else who might consider coming forward. The security footage, while grainy, provided the first concrete evidence of the organization's cleanup crew in action. Though their faces weren't clearly visible, their methodical movements and professional demeanor suggested they were experienced killers, not common criminals. They had executed their mission with cold efficiency, leaving behind a scene staged to mislead investigators. In early May 2019, Francis Davidson joined Blackline Racing as a maintenance mechanic. His reputation in the racing circuit and carefully cultivated recommendations made him a natural addition to the team. Still grieving his brother's death, Francis had to maintain a careful facade of professional detachment while working alongside the very people he suspected of murder. His first weeks at Blackline revealed a carefully structured organization where information was compartmentalized. As a new mechanic, Francis was assigned basic maintenance tasks under strict supervision. He noticed immediately how the team was divided into distinct hierarchies. Senior mechanics rarely interacted with junior staff, and certain areas of the garage were restricted to specific personnel. The betting scheme began to reveal itself through fragments of overheard conversations and patterns Francis observed during race preparations. Bookmakers connected to Blackline Racing consistently offered suspiciously favorable odds on certain drivers, particularly those who had been dominating recent races. During his second month, Francis was assigned to work with a senior mechanic named Marcus Reed. Reed, after several late nights working together and shared bottles of whiskey, began to let his guard down. He bragged about the extra income available to mechanics willing to do special work for the team. The amounts he mentioned were staggering: $50,000 to $250,000 for what he called precision adjustments to certain vehicles. The money laundering operation became visible through the team's parts procurement system. Francis noticed how replacement parts were consistently ordered through a small group of construction companies based in the Cayman Islands. The invoices he handled showed parts being purchased at vastly inflated prices, sometimes 10 times their actual market value. These companies, while maintaining a facade of legitimate construction business, were clearly serving as channels for laundering the organization's illegal betting profits. A breakthrough came when Francis was tasked with organizing the team's physical maintenance records. Hidden among routine paperwork, he discovered a set of documents about his brother's final race. The records showed that Tyron's car had undergone an unscheduled inspection 3 days before his death. The work order was signed by mechanics who, according to other team members, weren't even at the track that day. The paperwork trail revealed more. Francis found requisition forms for brake components that had been installed on Tyron's car. The serial numbers didn't match the team's official inventory, and the installation hadn't been logged in the regular maintenance system. These discrepancies formed a pattern he recognized from other suspicious accidents. A shadow maintenance protocol that existed alongside the legitimate one. Through careful observation, Francis identified the key players in the scheme. Vincent Carter, Blackline's team principal, held regular closed-door meetings with a group of senior mechanics and external visitors. These meetings always coincided with large betting pattern shifts in upcoming races. The same mechanics who attended these meetings were invariably assigned to work on cars that later experienced mechanical failures. The most damning evidence came from a conversation Francis overheard in the team's break room. Two senior mechanics, unaware of his presence, discussed Tyron's crash. One complained about how rushed the job had been, saying they usually preferred to prepare cars at least a week in advance. The other mentioned that the Davidson's situation had required immediate action because of some reporter asking questions. Each day inside Blackline Racing reinforced Francis's understanding of how his brother had been murdered. The organization operated like a well-oiled machine, with each component, from mechanics to bookmakers to money launderers, working in perfect synchronization. Their strength lay in their compartmentalization. No single person could expose the entire operation because no one, except the leaders, knew all the pieces. According to Francis Davidson's testimony in Interrogation Protocol number 247 dated March 29, 2020, he accessed Blackline Racing's administrative wing at 23:45 using his maintenance card. His stated intention was documenting evidence of their criminal activities. His movements through the building were deliberate and methodical, focusing on the executive offices. The Blackline Racing security report indicates that guard James Peterson detected unauthorized entry in the administrative wing at 0023. He observed flashlight beams through the financial director's office window, immediately triggering standard security protocols. From Francis Davidson's detailed testimony about the confrontation, I was heading towards the emergency stairwell when I saw Vincent Carter at the end of the hallway. He was wearing an expensive dark suit, which seemed strange at that hour. The corridor lights reflected off something in his hand. A matte black pistol. Carter's voice was unnaturally calm when he spoke. He said he'd been watching me, that my grief act was convincing. Then he mentioned Tyron, saying, "Your brother should have stayed in his lane." He smiled while saying this. I remember his exact words because they matched the phrase from the sabotage order I just photographed. Davidson's testimony continues. Carter mentioned knowing about my military background. He said it made me a liability from the start. When he raised the gun higher, I reacted instinctively. We collided with the decorative table. The first shot went off during the struggle. I remember the sound of the bullet hitting the wall. Everything after that became a blur of movement. The second shot happened while we were fighting for the gun. I didn't realize immediately that he'd been hit. The forensics team recovered multiple pieces of evidence at the scene. A camera containing photographs of financial documentation, a USB drive loaded with maintenance files, and printed orders bearing V. Carter's signature regarding modifications to T. Davidson's vehicle were secured. A Glock 17 pistol with an abraded serial number was also collected from the scene. Security Officer Trevor Mills provided additional testimony about the immediate aftermath. When we reached the second floor, Davidson was performing CPR on Carter. He kept repeating, "Don't die. You need to answer for Tyron." There were documents scattered across the floor, and Davidson immediately told us not to touch them, saying they were evidence of murder. Security guard Michael Rodriguez revealed long-standing suspicions about illegal activities within the company, particularly following a series of suspicious accidents. His decision to personally oversee the preservation of evidence Davidson gathered proved instrumental to the case. The medical examiner's report dated March 30, 2020, confirmed V. Carter's death resulted from a gunshot wound to the chest cavity. Analysis of the bullet trajectory strongly indicated a struggle for the weapon occurred. Time of death was established at 0035. The financial investigation uncovered an extensive network of shell construction companies in the Cayman Islands. These entities, operating under various names including Blackline Construction LET, Carter Investment Group, and Racing Future Developments, processed illegal funds totaling $127,384,592. Former Blackline Racing Financial Director Robert Hawkins detailed the operation's structure in his testimony. He described Carter's sophisticated system of race manipulation through betting and driver elimination via engineered technical malfunctions. Tyron Davidson became a liability after noting discrepancies in maintenance procedures. The crime scene investigation of the second-floor corridor documented clear evidence of physical altercation near a decorative table. 2 9mm shell casings were recovered. Investigators noted a bullet impact in the wall at 1.7 meters height and blood evidence in the carpet fibers. Technical examination of Tyron Davidson's vehicle revealed deliberate tampering with the brake system. The damage pattern matched 5 previous accidental cases, establishing a clear methodology of sabotage. The International Motorsport Federation implemented comprehensive safety reforms following the Blackline Racing case. New protocols established independent technical failure investigations, comprehensive betting monitoring systems, enhanced maintenance oversight, and whistleblower protections. The discovery of detailed technical documentation exposed precise sabotage methods designed to cause catastrophic failures while maintaining plausible deniability. Financial records revealed an intricate betting scheme, generating millions in illegal profits through race manipulation. The trial documents N471 detail extensive proceedings spanning from April to August 2020. The case filed by the state prosecutor's office listed 27 defendants, with charges ranging from first-degree murder to financial fraud. According to hospital records, Vincent Carter was pronounced dead at 2:17 a.m. on March 30, 2020, despite emergency surgery attempts. The official cause of death was listed as hemorrhagic shock due to gunshot trauma to the thoracic cavity. Court transcripts reveal Blackline Racing's financial director Robert Hawkins received a 25-year sentence after pleading guilty to multiple charges: 5 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, money laundering, and criminal enterprise operation. During sentencing, Judge Sarah Martinez noted, "Your expertise was instrumental in concealing these crimes, making you equally responsible for their tragic outcomes." The syndicate's chief bookmaker, George Sullivan, accepted a 20-year plea deal in exchange for providing detailed testimony about the betting manipulation scheme. His testimony revealed systematic race fixing spanning 6 major racing circuits over 5 years. The technical investigation report submitted to court identified 7 senior mechanics who directly participated in vehicle sabotage. They received sentences ranging from 10 to 15 years based on their level of involvement and cooperation with investigators. The jury deliberated for 6 days regarding Francis Davidson's case. The final verdict acknowledged self-defense circumstances while addressing the fatality. Davidson received an 8-year sentence for involuntary manslaughter, with possibility of parole after 5 years. Prison correspondence records show Davidson received 47 letters from victims' families during his first year of incarceration. Margaret Lenz, mother of driver James Lenz, wrote, "Your actions brought peace to our family. For 3 years, we blamed James for the crash. Now, we know the truth." The compensation committee established by the court approved settlements for families of all 5 victims. Blackline Racing's seized assets, totaling over $127 million, were liquidated to fund these settlements. Each family received structured payments covering both emotional damages and lost future earnings. The International Racing Federation's Ethics Committee conducted parallel proceedings, resulting in lifetime bans for 31 individuals connected to the scheme. The committee's report emphasized, "The Blackline Racing case exposed systemic vulnerabilities in our sports safety protocols. The reforms implemented in response will serve as Vincent Carter's unintended legacy." Prison psychologist Dr. Teresa Link noted in Davidson's 6th-month evaluation, "The subject expresses complex emotions about the outcome. While he regrets the loss of life, he maintains that exposing the criminal enterprise was worth the personal cost. His primary concern remains ensuring similar schemes cannot emerge in racing's future."